Welcome back to the channel. It's been a little while since I've done a video on the Springboks. Naturally, the first few months of the year get taken up mainly by the Northern Hemisphere and the Six Nations, but over the last few days, I've been pondering a question about the fly half position for the Springboks, which actually, I think if we wound the clocks back a year, would be a similar question to what I was asking then in the build-up to the World Cup. But it is, what direction do the Boks go at fly half in 2024, and then looking further afield as well? Is it Handre Pollard, Mannie Libbok? I think it's probably still those guys for the time being, or is there someone else that is going to come in to that team and to that jersey and give those two players competition? So welcome back. Comment down below. Who do you think they're going to go with? Who do you think they should go with? And who do you think are some of the exciting options coming through that we could see playing in that famous jersey in the not too distant future? Don't forget to like the video whilst you're here and subscribe to the channel as well. As I say, I think for now it's still Pollard and Libbok, right? But the interesting thing here is last year, Libbok was the guy for pretty much the entire season, partly because of injuries. Pollard was returning from injuries, returning to fitness, but Libbok was playing really well as well. Until, probably about an hour worth of the semi-final and the World Cup final, when it really came down to it in the heat of the moment. Handre Pollard was once again the guy that the Boks needed, and he helped kick them to glory and back-to-back World Cups. So what I've been considering really is, whose jersey is it sitting here right now, looking ahead to the rest of this year? Is it Pollard? Because he was clearly, once again, I mean, he's an unbelievable fly half. He's got that all-round game. His kicking game is superb. So is he still the player that you think the Boks will go with kind of into the rest of the year, the player they will start with? Or actually, will they go back to Mannie Libbok? Was Pollard needed for a very specific assignment as autumn was starting to kick in Europe, and it was wet and cold and a bit windy and rainy? And under those conditions, Pollard was who you needed in a knockout game towards the end of a World Cup. Was it those specific factors that meant he was the person they had to rely upon? And actually they'll go back to Libbok in the way that he was their fly half for the majority of last year at the beginning of 2024. Will they continue with him as that kind of attacking fly half and accept the inconsistencies, I suppose, in his kicking game? It's not that Mannie Libbok can't kick. We've seen him be clutch before. He has been for the Stormers a number of times this year, but he still also has the capability of not quite being as reliable as you need at the very, very top level. And that is where Pollard has been there and done it time and time again. And you would rely on him every single time to deliver for you there. So you've got those two contrasting styles and two options, which are good options for where the Springboks could go. The other question, I suppose, is who else could come in? And this is where I'm really interested to hear from Springbok fans, from fans in South Africa who watch a lot of the teams in the URC, because Sanelly Nhamba is a name that crops up a lot when I've been looking into it. The guy for the Lions who, it's a really interesting case. He was a scrum half and then adapted to fly half seamlessly. His kicking seems pretty good. He seems to be more in that Libbok kind of mould, in that he's fast, he's dangerous when he gets into sort of broken field. Really exciting player to have as your fly half. So is he the next player to step up and take that opportunity? He was part of the alignment camp, wasn't he, that the Springboks have had already this year. He was part of that wider squad that Erasmus named, looking at his different options, getting guys into camp. He was one of those players there, so I wonder whether we could see him feature. And then the other flip side to this whole conversation is South Africa's first game this year is against Wales at Twickenham in June. I'm hoping to be at that game because when I was at the Springboks All Blacks game last year before the World Cup, it was a great occasion. I know Wales are not the All Blacks, particularly how they're playing at the moment. But even so, I think it would be a pretty well-attended and pretty good evening. So I'm hoping to be at that game. But the interesting thing about that match is it falls out of a usual test window, which means Erasmus could be without quite a few of his frontline players. He could certainly be without Pollard, because he plays up here in the Northern Hemisphere. And then I suppose it depends on the URC, on how far the Bulls and the Stormers get, for what options he has there, or whether they are still playing, etc. So that's where someone like Sanelly Nhamba, is that where we see a player like him come into the team and be given an opportunity, because they're not going to have the full strength and depth that they usually would to pick from. And it could be a game against Wales, who are in a pretty desperate state, let's be frank. Anyone that's watched Wales over the last year, certainly in the Six Nations, picking up the wooden spoon, etc., whether that's an opportunity to try someone new at fly half. So what do you reckon? My gut instinct is that Libbok will be the guy for the most part they go with to start the year. I was at Northampton-Leicester on the weekend, and to me, Pollard didn't look fully fit. He looked pretty gassed in the second half of that game. There was one point where Northampton kicked in behind, Pollard was the man that had to chase it, ran back, collected it in his 22, and he kicked out, kicked to touch, and it wasn't a great kick, and he immediately bent over, hands on knees. He looked absolutely knackered, so I don't quite know where his fitness is at the moment. Now, that isn't necessarily an issue, because the Boks aren't going to be playing for another couple of months or a month and a half or so, so it's not a pressing issue. But yeah, I just wondered whether he was quite in the form or the vein of form at the moment that would see him start for the Springboks. I think if it came down to, I think it might depend on the game. So I think for a lot of this year, we could well see the Boks continue to go with Mannie Libbok and to go with the attacking philosophy that he brings as fly half. But let's say if they play the All Blacks away, or they have a big game in the Rugby Championship that could be a do or die sort of matchup, whether then that is where you see someone like Pollard come back in as the more, put in inverted commas, reliable pair of hands, in that he's been there and done it. The stuff I talk about of him being able to kick goals under pressure in those big moments. That's kind of my gut instinct for where they'll be at the moment. In terms of new blood coming through, I think that's a process. I don't think it's necessarily this year. I think we could see someone come in for, say, the Wales game, but I think that's probably a development you see over the next 4 years rather than seeing immediately in 2024. Something the Boks did brilliantly between 2019 and 2023, I thought, was the way in which they did develop players for that squad. It wasn't a case of throwing them in at the start of a 4-year cycle. It was picking their moments. It was the second test against Wales in that 3-test series in South Africa, where they won the first test, made 15 changes for the second test. They lost that game, but they were able to give a load of guys experience and game time. And that's why I think this Wales game could be a match they identify right at the start of the new cycle, missing players already, as an opportunity to bring other players in. So that's my gut instinct at the moment. I'll be intrigued to know if the Springbok fans clicking on the video and that follow the channel, whether you agree with me, throw in some other names there. I've obviously only gone through 3. I know with the talent in South African rugby, there will be loads of players there that are potential options. So you can let me know in the comments section. What do you make of it? What do the Springboks do with fly half in 2024? And then looking beyond over the next couple of years, building up to the next World Cup. Make sure you like the video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.